Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Breeding the Honeybee. I'm Brent Nixon, and today I'm going to be speaking with Rae Butler. Rae is a VSH, that's Varroa Sensitive Hygiene Specialist Queen Breeder from New Zealand. She operates the Bee Smart Breeding Program, which produces VSH bees. Rae has spent some time with the VSH breeding program in Baton Rouge, Aristas Bee Research in the Netherlands, and the Bee Informed Partnership based at Maryland University. Rae, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Kia ora, Brent. Really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. So, tell us what it's like there in New Zealand at the moment.
Spring is just springing into action, and so I sort of spent the winter time sort of going over a lot of my results and coming up with some action plans, and now thought I had plenty of time to get ready for the spring, and all of a sudden it's here, and I'm running around like a hen with his head chopped off, basically. But yeah, busy. We had and the bees are looking really, really good considering we had such a wet winter.
Fantastic. And so you got into beekeeping, I believe it was in Russia that you started doing some beekeeping stuff. Is that right?
Well, I didn't exactly go beekeeping in Russia, but I was introduced to the concept of beekeeping when I was there. I got some black market tickets in Hungary for the Trans-Siberian train, and when we were on it, we were in the cabin with some Russian scientists, and there was one of the women there. She couldn't speak any English, but we sort of sat shoulder to shoulder the whole 6 days. And every day she'd pull out fruit leathers or preservatives or pickles or something, and she'd tell us what they were. And then 5 o'clock every night we'd drink vodka. And then one of the last days she pulled out a brown bottle, and they told me that it was something from a beehive lid, that you roll it up and soak it in alcohol, and it was good for whitening your teeth, good for sore stomachs, good for wounds, and good for sore throat. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Didn't know at that stage what she was showing me, or even what a beehive was, basically. She gave us, my partner at the time and I, a gold spoon, and said, and that was for our first child. So we went off on our merry way, and about 5 months later I found I was pregnant, and I came home, had my son, and then 6 months later, while I was at home with him, I saw a beekeeping course, and that got my interest up. So I pretty much went and did a beekeeping diploma at Rangiora Training Institute. And at the same time, when you're doing the training, you went and worked with other commercial beekeepers, and I worked in with Trevor Catamol, and he was a queen breeder they run about 3,000 hives. So that's how I first learnt queen rearing, basically. And the interesting thing was what she had showed me. Linda Clarkson, that was taking the beekeeping course, she was an ex-nurse. So of course we decided to scrape all the wax off the beehive lids and put it into vodka, because that's all I was drinking, and tested it out on some of the students when they had a sore throat, and of course they said it worked, but I wasn't too sure whether it was the vodka or whatever was in it. And then with her nursing background, we worked out we could use ethyl alcohol. And at that time, Convita wasn't even making, it was propolis tincture they'd introduced me to. And at that time, I think I contacted people in Poland to find out what it was, and then I contacted Convita. They weren't making it, but yeah, that was my first introduction to beekeeping, basically.
Oh, fantastic. And so when you tried to create it yourself, was it the same? Did it have the same flavour?
No, it was more, no. Oh, once we used ethyl alcohol, it did. That really brought out the propolis, and it was a bit tangy, But I've always had a bit of a thing about propolis from now on. I'm always smearing it on my teeth and forget it was on and walk into a dairy or something to buy my lunch.
Oh, that's excellent.
But yeah, no, it was a completely different consistency, really. Yeah.
Ah, that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, that's okay.
So we were talking before about the history of Varroa in New Zealand. Do you want to tell us a little bit about when you were aware of it before it came to New Zealand and you were part of a program that was preparing for it? Do you want to tell us a story about that and up until when it got there?
Oh, yes. We always were aware that eventually New Zealand would get Varroa, and it's just the inevitability. So we formed a Varroa pest management strategy. So it was a group of us here in Canterbury. We came up with a levy, and we then worked with Plant and Food, Mark Goodwin and Michelle Taylor, and we came up with a plan of eradication. So we experimented. I was in North Canterbury at the time, so we went to the area where I was. We cleared out all the commercial hives away from the area. It was a little bit more isolated than most of the other Canterbury areas. We notified all the other beekeepers, of course, and we all moved our hives. Then we experimented with poison and sugar syrup. Working out dosages. So I think we did leave some hives behind just to see whether it worked, because we were wanting to kill all the ferals and everything. So the first time it didn't work, so then we had to up the dosage. Then we found that it did work, and the system was put in place. It was accepted by MAF at the time and the beekeeping industry that we had a strategy plan for eradication of Varroa arrived. So when it did arrive in 2000, it was unfortunately in the centre of the North Island, and it wasn't contained. So sadly, they decided that it was too far spread. As well as that, I'm not, don't quote me on all the politics. This is just my take of what had actually occurred. The other thing was, we, as the committee, we thought we'd okayed with MAF and everybody the use of the poison to kill the bees, but unfortunately there was a loophole, and it was deemed not approved for use for an eradication. So then the manufacturer decided he didn't want it to be used. They didn't want it to be known to be killing bees, so the whole pin was pulled on that sort of eradication plan. And then the North Island had it for a few years, and then when it got down to the South Island, the north of the South Island, there was a plan that they formulated saying that, well, how about we sell our infested hives to the North Island, and then and that means we didn't have to destroy the bees. But that wasn't accepted either. That was probably one of those, as I said to you, one of those beekeepers and initiatives it sounded like a good idea, but probably the logistics of it would have been a nightmare. But that was just, you get into that frenzy of like, okay, what can we do? But yeah, unfortunately, none of them did. Were taken up, and we did all eventually get Varroa.
Mm-hmm. And I believe it took about 4 years to get from the north part of the island all the way down to the southern part. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think it was up to about 6. Yeah, to 6 for the whole, but 4 to the top of the north.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, might have been longer. I know I did do a PowerPoint on it, but yeah, don't quote me on that. But yeah, it did take about 6 years to get down. Mm-hmm.
So I was speaking with John Berry, and he was telling me that the VSH genetics program was established, and the genes were actually taken from bees that were actually in New Zealand at the time. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Michelle Taylor and Mark Goodwin, they had a 3-year funding to look at all the bee population throughout New Zealand and to see if they could find the VSH trait in the New Zealand bee population. And yes, they did, because of course VSH is an additive trait, so it's only the bees actually only bring it out to the fore once you've got Varroa. So yeah, that 3-year plan, they did find that they could, and they could breed with it. So they had Mercury Island was an isolated island, so they used that as a closed, put bees on the island and used that as a closed breeding population there to build up the VSH.
Okay.
So yes, that was successful.
Yeah, excellent. So that program, was that a government initiative?
Yes, yeah. So that was funded by the government. So then when the funding ran out, unfortunately, they didn't carry on getting it funded. So then they did a tech transfer for the bees, and I was involved in that up in Nelson. And so we received some queens, and better bees down in Otago, they got some semen. So it was distributed around, and then in Nelson of course then it was deemed a breeding program, and in New Zealand, I'm not sure about Australia, but New Zealand breeding programs can't get funding. They don't deem, I don't think the powers to be don't appreciate that bee breeding is completely different to cow and cattle and sheep breeding. So we did get some funding to look at the cryopreservation of semen and looking at the VSH, the hemolymph of the bee, I think it was. But unfortunately, breeding programs, it's really, really time-consuming to do the VSH, and unfortunately the breeding program did fold after a couple of years. And then I think, Better Bees haven't really, they did do a little bit with the VSH as well, but I think they found the same. It's very time-consuming. Excuse me. And at the time, too, VSH is very new, even though it had been going on for, been studied around the world. It was very easy for beekeepers. There wasn't a demand for it because there wasn't enough understanding, I feel. So when the VSH program folded, I moved up down here to Ashburton and thought, well, it's I've got all this knowledge and know-how, so I decided to see if I could find it in the bee population down here in Canterbury. And I've been doing that for 6 years, and it's taken me quite a while to build it up. But, I have found the VSH, and this year hopefully will be my turning point to the breeding program.
Excellent. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you maintain the VSH gene in your own population?
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting because I think I'm the only one in New Zealand that's really excited about finding Varroa.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, excuse me a minute. Because what I have to do is first I might monitor all my hives. Now, before we got Varroa in New Zealand, everybody always overseas, they said monitor, monitor, monitor. That was always the mantra. Now, it's really important, even as Australia will know, because even if you haven't got Varroa, you have to monitor just, to find out whether you have had an incursion. So what I do is I select for my breeders. In the spring, I go around and I might monitor all my hives, and now I know which ones have daughters of previous breeders. But right at the start, I had to go around and monitor all my hives regularly every 3 weeks for the mite levels. And with the MPG, the mite population growth, you can sort of over two months in the spring get an indication of what bee colonies are actually keeping very, very low mite levels, like you take a sample of 300 bees, and if the sample of 3 mites per 300 bees was 3 or less, or 0 was perfect for at least 2 months, then I know that that indicates that there is some sort of resistance possibly in that hive. And you've got to realise the mite population growth, that could be like Varroa resistance is bees that actually interrupt the fitness of the Varroa. There's Varroa tolerance, which is they interrupt the effects of Varroa. So I'm looking for like Varroa resistance, and Varroa resistance could be anything from grooming or shorter brood nest cycles, or it could be SMR, suppressed mite reproduction, or VSH. So that's my first indication that this hive is doing something. So, and my one is like, I'm really interested in VSH. So that's maintaining Varroa, but of course, how can I prove that it doesn't, that it is good with, it does have the VSH. So therefore, when I'm monitoring, I also keep an eye on what hives have high levels. So then I set aside hives that are maintaining a high level of Varroa, and I also have to make sure they don't collapse. And I have to put them in the most isolated area that I can, because I don't really want to infect my neighbours as well. So I have to maintain them at a certain level. So then I get the hives. I also looking at the brood, like I look for uncapped purple-eyed brood. When wax moth burrows through the brood nest, and you can see that there's lines of uncapped purple eye. Have you noticed that?
I have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you don't confuse it with that, but you're looking for uncapped purple eyes, because what the bees are doing, they're going into the pupae at a certain age, and they're actually uncapping and pulling out that pupae. And I'm looking for half body parts in there. I'm looking for signs of hygiene, basically. And then with those ones, and they've also got to pass the other tests. They've got to pass honey reserves, they've got a temperament, good brood patterns, and good bee numbers and everything. And then once I've decided which ones I want to test for VSH, I then take uncapped frames of brood from those certain hives, pop them into what I call the Varroa towers, and then I wait for the larvae to be capped, and then I take it out and I do my first assessment. So I have to look at 200 cells at a certain age, and I uncap them, and just to see what the infestation rate is from around those 200 cells. So I'll get an infestation rate. Of course, I've killed that larvae, but I have to make sure there's enough larvae at that same age, that same cohort, and put it back into the parent hive, and then I wait about a week, and then I pull out the same frame again and look at the same cohort of pupae now, because it's evolved, and I do Varroa counts and see whether the infestation rate of the next 200 has gone down, and I also look at the mite dynamics. I see whether there's been any interrupted the reproduction system of the mites. I just assess whether it's been interrupted or not, and I look for recapping. So, and then I do some calculations from that to get a VSH rating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very labour intense.
Yeah.
I love doing it, but it does distract me from other aspects of my business as well. Mm-hmm. So that's hence why it's taken so long to sort of evolve. Basically, it was just I feel like I'm at the level now that I'm getting the attention of commercial beekeepers now, and I think there's more of people are sort of realising they can't rely on synthetics, and they need to look for alternatives. This isn't the be end and end all of it. You've got to having a breeding program, I think, has its merits to work in with other strategies in your IPM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, John was telling me, John Berry, he was saying that it's been there for 20 years now, and he feels that every year it's getting a little bit worse. So programs like this are really important for the future. And I think I should just take this opportunity to let listeners know that in Australia, we currently have a Varroa incursion. And so in Australia, we don't know a lot about Varroa at the moment, and we're not sure if it's going to take off or whether we're going to achieve eradication. And so it's really important for us in Australia to be speaking with people like Rae, so that we know how to deal with it when it sort of breaks out a little bit more.
Yeah, that's so true. It was interesting because I talked at your Australian Congress, the 4th Congress, just in June, was it?
Yeah, and that was really interesting because everyone was pretty happy at the time, and no one knew that we had a massive outbreak happening, and no one knew at the time. It was a few weeks later that we sort of figured it out.
Yes, yeah, and it was really ironic because I think I was at the previous Congress in Brisbane, and there was an incursion there, but you guys just stomped it on the head, and I was like, wow, that was really impressive. So when I heard the reports back, I thought, yeah. Well, found it, it'll be contained, and
yeah, that's right. But the previous incursions, so the one that happened in Brisbane, that wasn't Varroa destructor. That was another type of Varroa, and we'd had one in 2018 in Melbourne as well, but we managed to get it while it was still on the ship, and it never made it until to the mainland at any point. So, but this one that we're currently experiencing is quite a bit worse than those. So we're not really sure what's going to happen, and if it does break out, what would be your advice for Australians in the way to deal with it? If it gets to the point where we realize, okay, it's gone, we just have to learn how to deal with it now, or learn to live with it, what would be your advice for us moving forward?
Yeah, don't panic. It's not the end of the world. You can live with it. It's just more costly with things. But, everyone, straight away they use the synthetics drugs and everything worked. My advice would be do always monitor to get an idea on. You can't monitor all your hives, especially commercial guys, even if it's just 4 to 8 hives per apiary, just to see what your levels are all the time. And if there needs to be a bit of coordination, I've also been with all my work with the VSH, and I'm monitoring all the time. Monitoring tells you a story. If you're using, like I use organics and my breeding program, and I can see, if for example, we're very densely populated where I am in mid-Canterbury. We're the biggest seed area in New Zealand, and so therefore there's a lot of hives around for pollination. So I'm conscious of what's going on around me and the other beekeepers' outfits. So when I'm monitoring, if I have a low level and then 2 or 3 weeks later I go back, say I've got two mites out of 300 bees, and this has happened to me, and I go back and 3 weeks later I've got 26 to 50 mites per 300, then I know that it is impossible for your mite population growth to expand that quickly. It means that I've been mite bombed. I've had my bees have been reinfested with Varroa from around my area. So I'll ring my neighbours and I'll be telling them, well, how are your mite levels? But everybody doesn't communicate enough, and they're like, they get on the defensive, or they all know that I need a certain amount of Varroa for my breeding program. So, right, good old Rae, she's spreading the Varroa. But, it wasn't, I don't want to point fingers or anything. I just wanted my neighbours to know what's going on, because then if I've got high levels, and I also tell them, look, you're in this area, just be aware, I'm treating now, but they have got a bit high. So what it's telling you, like if I've got low levels and all of a sudden have hive, I've been mite bombed. So what I'm trying to promote now is a mite monitoring app. So that if everybody used it, they could use it individually, and if everybody, or collectively. So if I've got low levels, and then I put my levels in, and I get a ping record that everyone around me is low, sweet. If I'm low and everyone's around me, there's a couple of people high, then I know, well, okay, I've got to be more diligent. Maybe I'll have to treat again. If we're all high, well, we know that there's something going on in the area, so we can work around it, and we can also look at what treatments we're all using, and maybe there is becoming some resistance. You need data to make informed decisions. And also, like if I'm high and everyone else is low, then I know it's my management problem. Have I left the treatments? Did I not store them correctly, or did I not use them correctly, or were they not placed in the right place of the hive? So I think it's really important and it's really hard one for everyone, hopefully in your own regions, sort of work together, collect more collectively. Hopefully we do learn to do that now. They want, a lot of people are calling for treating at the same time, which would be convenient, but then I'm finding with my breeding program, the guys that I'm working with, we can actually treat just slightly later to everybody, so we don't have to have treatments in the hive when they're still doing the honey. You still have to treat if you're breeding for VSH, but you can maybe extend them. But you actually have to monitor your hives to make those informed decisions. It creates a little bit more work, but I actually think it makes beekeeping more interesting. And look at your alternatives. Use your synthetics when you need to. There's nothing wrong with it, but just be wary that yes, mites can get resistance to them, or sometimes there might be some issue with them. Have a few things in your toolbox. Basically, look at the alternatives. Support your queen breeders. Ask your queen breeders, what are they doing? What sort of quality controls do they have on their queens, and things like that. So, just communicate and
that's really
help
interesting.
each other, basically.
Yeah, really interesting. What's the name of that app that you were talking about, Rae?
Oh, it's going to be the mite monitoring app. We're still going for funding to bring it together. Luckily, Future Bees really like the idea of it, so they're helping me coming. So, but it is based a little bit on the Bee Informed partnerships. They have a mite check app, so Google that. And it was funny because when another Martin Lars here from Midlands apiaries, we sort of got together and we were both sort of following what was happening in America. We've sort of come up with our idea of an app, and then we saw that they were doing one, but theirs is more once a year. Whoever's involved in it put theirs in it. We wanting it more hands-on for the beekeeper. A lot of the beekeepers, or the bigger guys, they have hive apps and everything, and that they can now put their mite monitoring levels into, but we would like to design something that actually can be collaborated with those, so then we can get some, what's going on regionally. Because there's a lot of amazing research coming out, and what I'm saying to researchers too, like if they don't have a baseline of what the mite levels are around New Zealand, how do they know? It's all very well proving something in the lab. Look at the VSH, all very well doing that. That's amazing, but heck, help the commercial guys use it. It's really labour intense. I'm forever looking. Hopefully I'm coming up with some cunning plans to simplify it in the future. But you need a baseline. How do I know my VSH is working? How do you know the commercial beekeepers? I'm always wary that queen breeders are going to start going, I breed for resistance. I get a little bit nervous about that, or making any claims myself. I'd rather somebody have a mite monitoring app so they can actually prove, what is happening, sort of thing. And research is like, there's different things being researched at the moment that, they need to have a baseline, basically.
So apparently...
I get very excited when I talk about it.
No, absolutely. It's fantastic. Apparently there's a technology that allows you to check instantaneously for VSH. Something to do with chopping a part of the wing off a bee, and you can test that way. Is that right?
Yeah, this snippet. Now, VSH is very complicated because it's Varroa Sensitive Hygiene. So the bees actually, they sense the Varroa in it, and then they hygienically remove it. So VSH is deemed to be more than one trait. So the snippets, they actually, from what I know, they are for the hygiene. So not all VSH bees are hygienic, but not all hygienic bees are VSH, because it's been really exciting, actually, my whole journey here, because when I first started with the VSH, it was always believed that the Varroa fed off the hemolymph, the blood of the bee, and it's only been in the last 2 years, I think it is, what's his name, Sammy, I've forgotten the wee guy's name, Sammy Ramsey, I think it is. He discovered that the Varroa lives off the fatty body fats of the Varroa. So then, and also they didn't know whether the bees were sensing that the larvae was in distress, or whether they were sensing something the mites were giving off. So Fanny Monet has just discovered last year that it was actually the compounds, the Varroa, the adult Varroa actually mimic the pheromones of the larvae, but the newly born Varroa are too small to, and they give off VPS compounds, vapor something compounds. I'm sorry, I'm a layman, I'm not a scientist, and I find it hard to retain the technical terms, but they give off a VPS, the compounds, and it's specific, VSHBs specifically detect that, so they uncap that cell. So, everything's just slowly evolving to find out, what they're finding, basically.
So do you use the technology, the snippet technology?
I have. Plant and Food did a survey, and they found my bees were positive, which was good. So they said it was good. And I think some of I won't quote James, but I think, he was really... But we haven't actually followed that up. I've sort of carried on because it's not VSH specific, but it is an indicator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you recommend
I'm more excited... Pardon?
Sorry, would you recommend that as a good way of monitoring those genes?
Not as yet. I don't think there's enough known. So they need to do more on it. I'm hoping, the more I look at it, the more research needs to be done. So, but it's a stepping stone. It's like discovering the VPS compounds. Now, can you spray that compound onto some cells to see whether the bees will uncap? Now that would be exciting. So that's why I think whatever happens in the science world, because you have to phenotype at the moment for the VSH, I think you're always going to have to do a certain amount of it, because genotyping it is proving to be a little bit difficult, and then you'd still want to maintain that that's actually correct. Right. Because sometimes I think, we'll find the best, we'll find another cure and I don't have to do this, because every time Bob Dunker's retired now, but I remember they'll discover something and I'll write to him and go, oh, does that mean I can give up all this laborious work now? And he's like, no, keep on counting. It's like, yeah. So, but, yeah.
So,
it's really interesting.
Yeah, that does sound really interesting. So, if you were to open up the hive of a really good VSH queen, what would you typically see?
Oh, just a normal hive, basically.
Yeah.
There was always it's just perfectly normal. Like the ones that I've just checked this first round, they're just amazing. They're humming with bees and brood. The brood density is just like I'm scoring at 4, because you don't notice any spotty brood or anything. I think because once once they're on top of the Varroa, and they just keep it at very low levels, so that they just do it as they need it. You don't get spotty brood or anything. Just a normal productive hive. When I first started it, I went to America and did an instrumental course with Sue Kobe. Gosh, what year was that? That was 2012. And I spent 3 months over there working with a friend of hers who was a queen breeder. He was a smaller queen breeder, but I talked to different ones, him and that about it, and they were like, oh yeah, VSH queens, they don't produce any honey. And I'm like, well, what are you basing that on? And it was just you get that everywhere, don't you? Beekeepers get their own ideas, and I'll be like, oh God, that's not good for business if I go back home and tell everybody I'm going to do VSH and they're not producers. And even here, there was, I think, rumours like that got around. They're not good producers, and I'll be like, well, they're not basing. It's all hearsay. So you don't get you can breed it into honey production, and they've done a lot of more research about that now as well. So VSH, you don't see any amazing bees with halos on flying around or anything, but yeah.
So is it possible, if it's a perfect, or the best you've seen, VSH queen, do you still have to treat that hive?
Well, I do, because I'm like in a densely populated area, because I'm finding because at the very start I'd only started with one. I found one, so I always do an organic treatment every autumn. I do mite levels. They do, a lot of them always maintain sort of under the threshold of 3 or 0, but I just do because, I don't know, I know Bob Dunker, Baton Rouge and everything, they don't anymore, but I don't have enough, I haven't built up enough to give that a test, if you know what I mean. I just, and especially in the autumn, because you've got a lot. I believe you will have to treat at least once a year, if I can build it up, or rely on 2. Look, at the moment, the guys they can't just rely on their 2 spring and autumn treatments. The guys that are getting my queens around me here, they are, but I'm not going to put any claims up yet. I would like to think I could get to a stage that you don't. But you see, you've got to remember the ones overseas. They're all able to import bees from proven VSH. Like where did they? Bob Dunker, Baton Rouge started with the VSH resistant bees from Africa. So we can't here. We're starting just with trying to find it in our stock. So to answer your question, I really don't know. And actually, I'm happy if you just have to treat once or twice a year.
And so, how are you maintaining the genes within your apiary?
Well, I'm doing limited instrumental insemination. I've got a bit of a pilot study going on to work out whether from my highest VSH daughters, whether I can breed it. Whether if I was I'm trying to work out whether I can build it and breed it up without instrumental insemination. Now I know Barchin at Aristas, he tells me I won't be able to, or I'll have to do single drone inseminations and everything, but I'm trying to come up with how can it work in the field.
Right.
So I do a little bit of instrumental insemination. I don't really have any isolated areas as such here, and my whole aim was when I did move here, because we tried up in Nelson, even on Mercury Island, the logistics of doing closed population is just like you've got to keep them fed, you've got to keep them, like they still need to be productive. Commercial guys need to still make a living out of their hives. They can't be researchers all their lives.
Yeah.
They have to live with it.
Yeah, and even we were talking about Brother Adam earlier, and when he was when he had his mating station there on Dartmoor over in England, they needed to be quite well looked after the whole time because there wasn't anything for them to eat most of the year. So you do have to put a lot of effort into the isolation mating of bees, whether it be an island or an isolated area. So there's a lot of effort there as well.
Yeah. Like I know Barchin was talking, you can take your coastal drones up to the inland because there won't be any drones there. And it's like, still, everything's still open. One thing I did love when I was, the third Congress that I was in Australia, and the Queen breeder was telling me that he had, you only heard his presentation, he had a train, so he'd keep his...
Is it Joe Horner?
Drones yes.
Yeah.
And he keeps the drones in his hives, and they come out on a train just at dusk, and he releases, is it that right? It releases the drones and the virgins at the same time?
It's honestly the most amazing thing. I've seen it personally. It's really cool.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I've spent some time with Joe Horner, and it's really amazing what he's done there. It's really cool. I hope you get to see it one day.
Oh, look, I was really, that's probably one of my memorable thinking, well, wow, if I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can't believe no one else around the world has done it. He's got an incredible system, and you can read all about it. Some universities have studied it, so you can read all about it, and it's amazing what he's done. And I think that if we do get Varroa here, that Joe will be really good at dealing with it. I mean, if it establishes itself. So he's probably our best hope at the moment, I'd say.
Yes. Yeah, I think you guys do have some good... Oh, no, is he the only queen breeder? No, you must have more, because I'm dealing with the Australian Queen Breeding Association, so
we have quite a few queen breeders, but Joe his lines, he supplies breeder queens to a lot of people. So he's not the only one. We have some people who do some island mating and things up in Queensland, but quite a few people around Australia, especially in the eastern part of Australia, use his gene lines. And he's a bit like you. He records everything, and so he's taking a lot of data, and he knows a lot about what's going on with these bees, and so a lot of people around Australia rely on that data as well.
Right. Yeah. Data's really important. Big data. But mind you, I still, everything's still on spreadsheets and things, but hopefully I can move with the times soon. But,
yeah. So can you tell us about how we can find out more about your program? How do we find you online?
I'm www.breeding. Be Smart Breeding.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a few articles that I've written for the New Zealand Beekeeping magazine. I'm a little bit slack of keeping it up to date, but there is a little bit of information about mite monitoring and the VSH program. But yeah, or anyone's free to, you can contact me via that website if anybody's interested.
Oh well, definitely we're interested. I think especially over the next few years, if this mite problem breaks out in Australia, then a lot of us will be looking at that research or looking at the things that you're doing. And me in particular, I'll be really interested to get involved in the VSH. And as John Berry said, we probably have it here in Australia already. And because we're not going to be bringing queens in, there are a few people who are bringing in some drones for the purpose of this, but apparently according to John Berry, he thinks that we would have the VSH trait here already. So I think we'll be looking forward to finding that and sort of building up a program that way if Varroa breaks out, which hopefully it doesn't.
Because it's an additive trait. So once you've got the Varroa, it will express itself. And you've got to think, like I always think, I was always against genetically engineering anything, but then when I think about it, well, the bees would probably eventually evolve to having some sort of a resistance, and I'd like to think I'm just speeding it up a little bit and hopefully maintaining the traits, the desirable traits, because you've got to look, the bees are so domesticated now because of all our breeding that we do with them, that we're just building it up a little bit faster.
Well, I'm interested to hear how everything goes with your app and with your the technology that you're developing. And I think we'll leave it there, Rae. Thanks so much for having a chat today. I know it's quite early there, so thanks for having a chat to me. And I hope that we can have a chat again soon.
Oh, look, thank you for taking such an interest. It's been my pleasure.
All right, well, I'll say goodbye now, and have a great day.
Okay, same to you. Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Rae.
Bye.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that episode today with Rae Butler over there in New Zealand. I've got a feeling that we're going to be having a lot to do with Rae in the next few years here in Australia. That's if we don't get this Varroa situation sorted out, and hopefully we do. If you want to get in touch with Rae, you can at besmartbreeding.co.nz. If you want to get in touch with me, you can at nixonbees.com.au. And until next time, thanks so much for tuning in.